The mailbag returns with a look at potential offseason moves, how the championship impacts Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derrick White's evolution, and questions about my book. That was nice. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster Brand, it's holiday season, drop Drew in the mix. And 3 from KP, no we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Deuce, still B-Town's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in locked on after. Karalis on the breakdown, clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic, documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and Jace, how we started, raising business, how we finish. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network where it's your team every day. And I got you covered every single day, Monday through Friday, with a free, fresh podcast that drops directly to your device. And it's a busy week this week with the mailbag, with Brad Stevens talking not once, but twice, pre-draft and post-draft. So I'll have that, plus Keith Smith this week, breaking down a lot of the off-season potential moves, things that the Celtics can't do, so much. So make sure you are subscribed to the show. Watch the show on YouTube. Get into the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking. I'm John Karalis. I used to play a long time ago. Now I'm covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. Today's show is about the mailbag. Oops, that's not the right graphic. The right graphic is coming right up. That's the right graphic. Here we go. Later on, we'll get into Jordan Walsh, get into questions about my book and the parade and all of that stuff, because I like to have fun at the end of these podcasts. We'll get into Kristaps and Derrick White and all of that stuff in the second segment. We'll start off with the Jayson Tatum Jaylen Brown title effect and offseason moves. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook. Make every moment more as the playoffs now wind down. By the time you listen to this, the Stanley Cup champion will be crowned. So it doesn't matter if the sports stop sportsing the way you want them to. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Let's dive into the mailbag here with Todd's question. If you could be general manager for a day, what moves would you make to shape the team's roster for the 24-25 season? Who to keep, who to promote, who to trade for, and free agents to sign? Let me tell you something. This is, I always say I would be an absolutely horrible, terrible GM. This season, I might actually be okay at it because the Celtics got nothing. The Celtics got no way to make no moves, no how. Let me fold in Corey's question. Who are some realistic free agents that you see the Celtics targeting this offseason? And John asks, I've seen people on national shows say the Celtics team is built for the new CBA with the second apron. Can you explain why? I'm going to do all of this right now. The second apron, and this is what the show with Keith Smith will focus on. We're going to deep dive this week with Keith, so keep an eye out for that. Because they're above the second apron, and there's no getting around this, right? There's and I wrote about this on Boston Sports Journal. If you're subscribed there, you can go read it. It's a good primer for the show. With the salary cap, then the tax line, and then the first apron above that, and the second apron above that, the Celtics are going to be well above all of those lines. They are going to be a second apron team, which means they are going to be incredibly restricted. So free agents, forget about signing free agents. They do not have the mid-level exception. They only have minimum contracts to offer. So unless somebody out there is willing to take a minimum deal from the Celtics, they can't get anything else. The Celtics can't use the taxpayer mid-level, which is almost $6 million or something around there. They can't use there's nothing. They do not have free agent money to spend. They cannot make a trade other than taking in the exact amount of money or less. They cannot do a trade. If a guy makes $20 million, let's just say Derrick White, they cannot trade him for a guy who makes $20 million and 5 cents. That's more. You cannot take in not 1 penny more than you send out as a second apron team. You cannot aggregate guys. You cannot say, "Ooh, Al Horford doesn't have it this year. Peyton Pritchard is a little bit off. We're gonna package those guys. We're gonna trade those 2 for somebody else." Cannot send out 2 players. You can send out 1 player and take back 2, as long as those 2 players do not make more than the 1 player. There's no wiggle room. There used to be, well, there is for players below the apron, but there's no wiggle room, right? Most teams have to match within a certain percent, and it's close, and you get that little bit of wiggle room. The Celtics do not have that. So the trades are going to be extraordinarily tricky. They can sign their own free agents. They cannot use their traded player exception. They have like almost $4 million left of the Grant Williams traded player exception. That's out. Cannot use that. So very, very limited for the Celtics. They have 11 current spots filled. Their unrestricted free agents are Luke Cornett, O'Shea Brissett now, Xavier Tillman, Svi Mikhailuk. So there are 4 spots that need to be filled. Luke Cornett's probably coming back because you're not going to do better than Luke Cornett out in the open market. They currently have the 30th overall pick. If they make that pick and it's not a draft and stash, that's a second spot. So now they only have 2 spots left. Does Tillman come back? Does Mikhailuk come back? I doubt it. So there's probably a room for maybe you bring back Tillman. Maybe you start looking around at one of the other minimum guys that might be out there, but it's a very limited options. Again, when I bring in Keith Smith this week, it's going to be much deeper explanation, but when it comes to free agents and making moves and all of that stuff, this is the team. This is basically the team, which is why they are built for the new second apron, because they don't have to make any moves. This is the squad. They don't have to make any trades. I mean, Brad Stevens is still going to work and talk and do his job, but this is a season where, you know what, Brad can work remotely. You want to go down to Aruba and set up like a Zoom call with people in the front office, you could probably get away with it. Don't need you around very much. Congratulations. Enjoy the new working arrangement, Brad. Maybe that's what I would do if I was a GM, and that's why I'd be a terrible one. But he's not going to have as much to do as he would under normal circumstances because of the very restrictive collective bargaining agreement. So with everybody locked up for another couple years and their ability to just use their bird rights, they can lock up Derrick White. They've already locked up Drew Holiday. Sam Hauser is going to be an interesting question, which we'll talk about with Keith. He can be extended, or they can it's a team option, so they can decline the team option and just give him a new contract and all that stuff. And so that's the crux of it. They've got their team, their top 8 are in place. They're pretty good, and they can get through the next season and the year after. And then they can start trading away maybe some pieces to kind of retool under, Jayson and Jaylen, however that works out. So, but that's why they're able to withstand this. I got questions about Jayson Tatum. Is he looser after a title? Jaylen Brown, the impact of him winning the finals MVP. All of that stuff is coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I watch them all the time. I never want them to stop, but the playoffs are done. The Stanley Cup will be, by the time you see this, given to somebody. Surprisingly, it might not be the Florida Panthers. Who knows? But whatever. I will watch whatever sports I can. And with FanDuel, all I have to do is open up the app and dream up my bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up every single customer Doesn't matter. Every single customer gets a boost or a bonus daily. So there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Check out Locked On Sports today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Free. It's all free. Watch it all day, every day, 7 days a week. You can get great sports talk from the local experts and turn off ESPN and Fox Sports and all that stuff, all the fake yelling at one another. Don't bother with it. Watch Locked On Sports today. Let's get back to the mailbag. Question from Henry. It says, is it me or is JT looser and more relaxed after the title? Feels like he's allowing himself to relax a little bit more. He's more confident. He's got nothing to prove. Could that translate to his game and bring him to a new MVP level? Listen, it's not out of the question. Tatum and Brown and the Celtics in general got tight in key moments. And they were bailed out in some ways by Drew Holiday. The way the team was built, somebody was able to step up and kind of break that tension. Now they've won it. Now they get it. Now they're soaking in all the adulation. I would not be surprised if next year Tatum and Brown come in a little bit looser for sure. And what does that mean? Maybe it means a little bit more confidence. Maybe it means getting over that hump. That's that confidence that comes with that. You're like, you know what? We've lost. We've realized it doesn't kill you. You can lose and come back and win. And the win is so great. We feel good about knowing how to do that again. And I think Tatum can just play his normal game. Could that elevate him? Sure. Could elevate the entire team. Any sort of tension, any sort of kind of whatever might have been, questions. Now they've done it. It feels like they can kind of cruise through some of the rougher spots that they suffered through last year. Now, maybe that might mean a few more losses, or maybe it means a few more wins. I don't know if that means they go to 66, 67, 68 wins, or do they go to 55, 56, 57 wins? Because they're like, we're going to save it. We're going to save it for the playoffs. These games don't matter. These games really don't matter. So these little pockets of 2-3 losses here or there, it's not going to be that big of a deal because they know. Or maybe those little lapses don't show up and they just power through them. Who knows? And this question from Nate, wondering what Jaylen Brown winning Eastern Conference Finals and Finals MVP does for his career. More importantly, his Hall of Fame case. I believe because he won, he should be getting more media attention and possibly more chances at all NBA and all defense. So Jaylen, in this same kind of boat as what I was saying with Jayson and with everybody, a little bit looser, a little bit more, a little bit more focused on like, okay, the noise, there's no more noise. You're the champs. How does that work in your favor or work against you? Maybe like, as Joe Mazzulla says, someone, congratulating you is just as dangerous as somebody telling you suck. Got to be careful about all that stuff. But the noise is gone and maybe some of those obstacles are gone and maybe Jaylen does play a little bit better, or maybe the perception is that he played better. There's always like a little bit of a lag on some of these awards where a guy could deserve something and then the year after they go, oh, geez, we probably should have voted for this guy. And Jaylen, with the playoff performance, people inherently, human nature, they say, the playoff performance colors how they see a player. And if the player is not a good playoff performer, then, or hasn't won a championship, like think of Nikola Jokic a couple years ago. Well, he didn't, he hasn't won anything. So how can we make him a 3-time MVP? Then he goes and wins a championship and boom, he's MVP again, which is dumb, but that stuff matters. So when you win a championship and when you win awards along the way and you're one of the most important players to that championship, then the perception of it does change. So how you're perceived definitely changes. Andres asks, what are your thoughts about KP's season of injuries? Did this confirm his injury proneness? Should they change his role in the future in the goal of reducing risks to injuries? And does this championship win put a success seal on the KP trade? Yeah. So whatever, everything Brad Stevens did, it worked. That's your seal, 100% seal of approval. The Kristaps Porzingis trade worked. The Drew Holiday trade worked. The Derrick White trade worked. Everything that they did, there's no downside to it whatsoever because you won a championship, so all of that works. Porzingis, I think, was held out longer than he might have, so his overall games played is probably lower than it might have been if they just let him play through a couple of things. But they also understand that they didn't have to. So I'm not going to say I'm worried. Like, I don't look at this season and think, oh man, Porzingis injuries, this is going to kill the Celtics down the road. I mean, they got by, they got through it, and he gutted through the part that he needed to gut through. Some of it was a potential injury prone, like the lower leg stuff for a guy that size is tough, but some of it is just, bad luck. That tear in the ankle, that's just, incredible bad luck. So I don't know. I choose to skew on the positive side. He's going to have that surgery. He'll be fine next year. And then we'll see if he goes through and if it's little nagging stuff or it's a big thing. I mean, you never know. It's always a possibility with a guy that size and his history, but I'm not sitting there. My big takeaway from that year for Porzingis is not like, oh, he's so hurt all the time. I just didn't feel that. Alexandros, you know what resonates in my brain? He says, the summer crossover pod with yours and the Locked On Spurs, what to expect Derrick White. Says, was listening and he said, don't expect a major difference maker and don't expect any 3-pointers. Well, that was true at the time. And, no one around Boston was like, yes, this guy is the missing piece. No one thought that. No one thought that nationally. People thought like he's a nice piece. He's a nice rotation piece. And this is a credit to the coaching in Boston, starting with Ime Udoka and really flourishing under Joe Mazzulla. That confidence that they instilled in him, the work that he put in, that all was part of him growing into much, much more than anybody expected. Like, no one expected the 3-point shooting because he was not a great 3-point shooter. And then he became one. No one expected a major difference maker because he wasn't a difference maker. Then he became one. So, yeah, I think that podcast is a good indication of like what he was and where he is. And guys grow over time. He's just become an amazing player. So shout out to him. David asks, do you think Jordan Walsh can take some of Brissett's minutes this year? Think he could bring similar defense and rebounding ability? Jordan Walsh has an elite skill set, and that's defense. He can be, I think, fairly quickly an NBA level defender. I think this past season he played maybe a tick too fast because he's a rookie and he's always hyped and he's I think just anxious to prove something. I think a review of his season, there's going to be like a, hey, settle it down. Just, the volume's at 11. We just want it at a 10. You don't have to go past 10. But to his credit, like he can dial it up. Like he really wants to be out there. And I think if he's going to get minutes, he's going to have to find his way offensively, which means he's going to have to work on that jump shot. He's going to have to perfect that jump shot. And that's a skill that you can learn. It's a skill that you can work on, but it's a very, very important skill for him to develop. He has to become a reliable three-point shooter. Not even Sam Hauser level, just 38%. A guy that when you put him out there, the other team goes, ah, crap. When he gets the ball and you've lost him in the corner, you want to be able to put him on the floor in those defensive situations. And when a team says, all right, fine, we're gonna see what he's got when you leave him, he's gonna be able to knock that shot down. So this is gonna be a big summer for him, big summer league, a big summer of work, individual work, and we'll see where he is to start training camp. He's still young, so no pressure on him to come in ready to go. But it would be nice if he can, on a cheap contract, come in and be a contributor. That just any level of depth that you can put out there to get out and learn and play and contribute and all of that stuff, that's going to be important. So can he? Sure, he can. He can come in and be part of the back of the bench rotation. Maybe he proves to be better than that. Maybe he's not ready for that. I think they still have they can do another year of development. They can do another year of no pressure. You can be, in the G League, you can learn, you can get some reps up here, you can get some garbage time reps up here and all of that stuff. So I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on him, but I think he's got a great attitude. I think he's got a great work ethic. I think he's got a ton of desire. And if he can start fixing some of those things, which it's not out of the question, then he has the potential to be a contributor for the Celtics. We'll get back with some fun questions. Celtics history questions. Questions about why I wasn't on a duck boat. It's all coming up in just a second. Let's get back to the mailbag here. Nick says, not a question, just a comment, but I like this comment. I find it really irritating when people talk about the Celtics and it goes something like, oh, the Russell years, the Larry Bird and the big three, Pierce, Garnett. Dave Cowens might want a word. How do people just skip over beating Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the road in Game 7 to win the championship in 1974? And worse, the series that featured the greatest game ever played, triple overtime against the Suns in 1976. And by the way, Pat Riley was on that Suns team. Surely that game and series are a big part of his legendary hatred of the Celtics. Nick, 100% right. 1 million, 1 quadrillion % right. The 70s are a lost era in the NBA. People glaze over the 70s. People are just like, oh, 60s, 60s, 70s happened, 80s, wow, because the 70s were a bit of a disaster. The ratings were in the tank. The product wasn't watchable. There was a huge drug problem at one point. They got a big challenge from the ABA, which hurt. And the game kind of changed a lot after the ABA merger. You got a much different kind of NBA basketball that took some getting used to. And it really took until this is where the Bird and Magic entry to kind of save the NBA. That's why the 70s are kind of forgotten. It shouldn't be forgotten in Celtics lore because Tommy Heinsohn was a coach and some greats like Cowens, like JoJo White, and Havlicek was part of that group too. They had some really incredible players and teams that in Boston we should be loving a lot. Like JoJo White might be the second best point guard in team history or the best. It's kind of like Kuzi gets that title for sure. JoJo White has a claim he was really, really, really good. But people don't really talk about JoJo. People don't really talk about Cowens with the same reverence. So, Nick, you get a gold star. That's 100% right. And we should be talking about 2 Celtics championships in that era. So That's big. Mike says, okay, what's the story? All we've heard for months is a podcast from a duck boat, podcast from a duck boat. Why were you denied this opportunity? And to whom do we pen our strongly worded letters? I always said hopeful for a podcast from a duck boat. The Patriots have had duck boats specifically for media and beat writers. The Celtics have not and did not. There were a couple of media trucks with limited space that I was not aware of, and didn't matter because you're just kind of like in front of a particular duck boat, and it wasn't kind of the same thing. What I was hoping to do is be on the duck boat and kind of like see and feel the same parade that the players saw and felt, so I can relay that story. You know, part of what you do as a writer, as a reporter, as a journalist, the journalist part of my job, you tell people you're the eyes and ears, right? You report, and I'm the storyteller, or one of the storytellers. And it would have been awesome to look over that crowd and see it from a player's perspective and feel it from a player's perspective. And no, not catch beers and slam them and pull a whole stone cold, which I would love to do on a personal level, but from a professional level, it was about trying to get there and give you amazing content. But look, the Celtics are not obligated to do that. The city is not obligated to do that, and they didn't do it. So I was always hopeful, but never did I say it was guaranteed. So it didn't happen. Hopefully next year, when they win it again, they will give us one, but we'll see. And finally, from Mike, said, I notice that you said your new book, Built Different. Here's the jacket. Here's what the jacket looks like. Built Different. Boston Celtics historic run to the 2024 NBA championship. Available now, I think everywhere in stores and on triumphbooks.com/Celtics win. Go there and buy it. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere. Okay. Anyway, so Mike says, I'm sure you wrote the book through the course of the season expecting the Celtics would win the title. But is Game 5 in the championship parade covered in the book? Game 5 is. The parade is not. Did you completely rewrite articles previously published on Boston Sports Journal specifically for this book? Yes, that's how I did this book. Now, let me explain. This is a commemorative book, right? This is special commemorative edition. It's a soft cover, paperback cover book. There's a lot of pictures. It's not like heavy writing. It's mostly like game stories from the course of the season that I kind of rewritten, reworked from stuff that I wrote from Boston Sports Journal. The game 5 story is basically I wrote a story and said, this is for the book. And this is also for Boston Sports Journal. And throughout the course of the playoffs, I was giving them stuff. So when it became clear that the Celtics were potentially going to win, I started working on the book. It's like 100 and something pages, but it's a lot of pictures, and it's not really like intense reading. It's basically my sports writing. And so that's how it happens. As the finals were going on, I was submitting stories from each game. And there are features that, like, I wrote 3 things about Al Horford for Boston Sports Journal. I kind of like reworked all 3 into one piece for the book. And same thing with Jaylen Brown. I reworked a few things that I had done for Boston Sports Journal into one piece for this book. And so there's some kind of like familiar stuff. If you read my stuff on Boston Sports Journal, there are some familiar like phrases and paragraphs and stuff like that. So that's how this thing got out so quickly. The whole point of the book, it's not like Pulitzer Prize winning material. It's the story of the season, a few key games, the 10,000 points for Tatum, 10,000th point for Jaylen Brown, the Missoula's 100th win, the time they ran up the score against the Chicago Bulls. All of that stuff is like along the way, quick storylines, mile markers from the season, and then stories throughout the playoffs, each playoff series, and all of that. So when the final buzzer sounded at the championship, went through my post game. I sat down at midnight, 1 a.m., wrote a story. That was the last chapter. I went off to print, and off it went. So that's how a book like that gets done. But it is what it is. My other book was a lot more writing, like that. It's all writing. This one is pictures and stories, and it's kind of like just flipping through coffee table style book to kind of just feel good about the season. You pick it up and you're like, oh man, yeah, I remember this. Oh yeah, I remember this. Oh, that's right. Jaylen had his 10,000th point this season, make the Hall of Fame case in that, and all of these little things along the way. So, yeah, I hope you like the book. I mean, honestly, it's the type of book that everybody should have after a championship win. You put it on your coffee table, you flip through it like in July, just to kind of relive some of the memories and get some of the amazing photographs. So go check it out. It's at triumphbooks.com/CelticsWin. Use the code Celtics24. You get 25% off your order. So go check that out. Eventually, I will be doing some book signings around town. I will be selling signed copies on my personal website soon. So if you want a signed copy, you can do that as well. Those will cost a little extra. So, but check those all out. And I'll be back. Look, Brad Stevens is talking on Tuesday. So I got a podcast coming up on that. I'm going to talk to Keith Smith about this offseason and kind of resetting things. I'll have a podcast on that. Brad Stevens talking after the draft is over on Thursday. I'll have more on that. So this is a busy, busy time, even though the season is over. They're back to work and it's back to business. And I've got you covered still Monday through Friday. So make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube. Get into the comment section and share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.